Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a completely true, honestly, hilarious story from the archives called A Sucker for Business, the $75 million pacifier. We're going to unpack exactly what happens when a massive, multi-million-dollar corporate showdown gets completely derailed by literally the most unexpected object imaginable. So think about it for a second. Have you ever felt totally out of place in a high-stakes corporate meeting? You know the vibe. We've all been trapped in that room full of endless bureaucratic posturing, just wondering what on earth we're even doing there. It's that classic clash of egos where everyone's trying to prove they're the smartest person in the room, right? It can make you feel totally disconnected from reality. But for the protagonist of our story today, feeling like an outsider in the boardroom, well, that was something he wore like a badge of honor. Meet Vic Campbell. Just look at that smile. This is a guy with deep agricultural roots in the small Florida hamlet of Chumuckla, and he proudly boasts his status as a Namba while navigating the corporate world. Vic just wasn't your typical executive. He spent his early career in animal agriculture, selling vaccines to veterinarians and dewormers to feed manufacturers down south. Through a series of career shifts, he ended up marketing chemicals for a massive multinational corporation. But here's the thing, he never lost that down-to-earth perspective. So what exactly is a Namba? Well, as Vic defines it, it's a professional with no MBA. While his corporate colleagues were these number-crunching Harvard types obsessed with quarter-to-quarter gains, Vic actually considered his lack of a Master of Business Administration to be a huge asset out in the real world. I mean, he even joked about slapping NO MBA right on his resume under the education section. He firmly believed that practical experience and long-term vision, stuff he picked up in agriculture, were way more valuable than just knowing how to spin financial reports to impress top management. And this sets the stage for a total clash of two very different worlds. On one side, you've got a down-to-earth Florida farm boy who actually appreciates the smell of fresh dirt and cow manure. On the other side, well, he's been dropped right into the cutthroat corporate castles of New Jersey. Vic described this environment as an ad nauseum bureaucracy. He actually found himself wondering just how many real, functioning brains were operating inside those New Jersey corporate castles, especially since common sense seemed to just vanish the second a meeting kicked off. But Vic had a secret weapon against all this stress. Ever since the birth of his son Alex, who was 20 months old at the time, Vic fundamentally changed his daily routine. He stopped stressing over that manic New Jersey traffic. Instead, he took his time. He enjoyed a peaceful breakfast with his wife Karen and baby Alex, sipped his coffee, and walked. Literally walked, didn't run, to his car. And crucially for our story, he started keeping an extra baby pacifier in his pocket at all times. Because as any parent knows, you never know when one's going to fall out of a baby's mouth, roll under a chair, and vanish forever. Okay, so the stage is really set when Vic's boss drops this absolute bomb on him. Hey Vic, I can't make it to this 8:30 meeting that lasts half a day. Can you go for me? Now, Vic's internal reaction is just priceless. He looks at this grueling half-day executive marathon as a prime example of exactly why America's losing its competitive edge. Just way too many pointless meetings. But obviously, you don't say that to your boss. You just say, sure, where and how high. And just like that, our peaceful, grounded Nomba gets thrown right into the bureaucratic fire. The tension in that room is immediately palpable when they sit down to debate a massive $75 million investment. Just let that number sink in for a second. $75 million. This wasn't some routine weekly sync. This was a colossal corporate decision that had everybody on edge. And for the first hour, the meeting just drones on. Executives are arguing over every tiny detail, questioning if the proposal is even necessary, and basically just trying to protect their own departmental turf. And the stakes? They were actually so much higher than that initial cost, because this enormous investment was needed for a specific product, projected to return $500 million in sales over just the next 5 years. $500 million was sitting on that table. Vic, representing the marketing department, was advocating hard for the investment. His logic was incredibly simple, practical, and very Namba. He basically said, the market demands the product, we're the only company that makes it, so if the customers want more, we should make more. Simple, right? Yeah, not in the corporate castles of New Jersey. Instead, a vicious corporate turf war completely erupts between Vic's marketing department, who clearly sees the customer demand, and the manufacturing engineers who want sole control over the whole operation. Somebody argues that new drug laws might ruin the return on investment. Others are just digging their heels in purely because they don't want another department telling them what to do. It was your classic clash of silos. The actual goal of serving the customer and making money, totally lost in internal politics.
So as this grueling meeting drags on into its second agonizing hour, one engineer decides he's just had enough. He bluntly declares to the entire room that marketing, which remember is Vic's department, has absolutely zero business being involved in the decision of whether or not to build more capacity. He claims that managing capacity to meet customer demand is the sole exclusive decision of manufacturing. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a direct territorial attack on Vic and his team.
Now, Vic notes in his own writing that he's of Scottish heritage, and because of this, when he gets embarrassed or, goes into an internal rage, his face flushes this deep crimson red. And he was absolutely enraged by this engineer's arrogance. Without the immediate words to verbally strike back, his instincts just completely took over. He decided to make a dramatic physical gesture. He reaches deep into his pocket, fully intending to grab his dry erase marker so he could aggressively and authoritatively underline a key point on the chart at the head of the table. With great flair, he rapidly whips his hand out of his pocket. He is so ready to dramatically point at his nemesis across the boardroom table, underline that undeniable market data, and totally silence the room with his marketing logic. This was setting up to be his ultimate cinematic boardroom moment of triumph. But instead of a commanding dry erase marker, Vic accidentally brandishes his son Alex's bright blue baby pacifier right in the faces of the executives. Seriously, just picture the scene for a second. This crimson-faced executive standing up to make a forceful point about a $75 million investment, aggressively pointing a brightly colored latex-nippled baby pacifier at a room full of tense, high-powered manufacturing engineers. You literally can't make this stuff up. The sheer absurdity of the gesture completely halted the corporate posturing right in its tracks. It was like a pin dropping in the room. In an instant, that whole illusion of corporate self-importance was just shattered. Here is Vic, the self-proclaimed armchair ruralist, standing there with a baby's pacifier. It brought everyone crashing back down to earth, instantly diffusing the toxic energy of the turf war, but reminding them, even unintentionally, of the actual real world existing outside that boardroom. So, in the end, what actually happened with that massive $75 million proposal? Well, the investment remained entirely unresolved. Yep, after all that arguing, absolutely no decision was made. Vic simply took the pacifier home a few days later and gave it back to baby Alex, who, by the way, didn't even notice the extra boardroom wear and tear. But the real shift was in Vic himself. He walked away from that completely absurd moment feeling a good deal less stress over his colleagues' endless inaction. He realized it just wasn't worth the high blood pressure. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. What physical reminder grounds you and puts things into perspective when your work life gets overwhelmingly absurd? Is there something that reminds you of your own real world, your own family, or your own roots, just like Vic Campbell's bright blue pacifier? Finding that anchor might just be the key to surviving the ad nauseum bureaucracy of modern life. Find your blue pacifier.